I'm Helen, and this is the tutorial video for the Vivaldi third violin part. So, one of the first things you'll want to do is mark where everyone plays in the part, so that's where it says tutti above the part. So as you can see, I've circled it and put an arrow, so whatever you need to do to let yourself know that you play there. So this piece starts with the tutti at measure 5, and for this one we will want a bow stroke that is staccato but still somewhat connected. So you'll want to start around the balance point of the bow and kind of not too far away from the bridge so we can still make it forte. So you don't want it to be too long, but you also want to use a pretty good amount of bow for it. And you also want to make sure to start on the string. So if you can see in measure 5, we also have a retake before each of the up bows. So you will want to probably practice that retake. You can do this by making a circle with your bow. You play the note, and then this is in slow motion. You circle your bow back up to the starting point. This can help you get used to that circle retake motion. So here is what the first few measures of the tutti in measure 5 sound like. So as you can see, the up bows, I'm not accenting the up bows too much. I'm trying to more accent the down bow after the up bow. So this will give it a nice phrasing and make it a little less boring than if we were just to play. See, then they all sound a little bit too much the same. So next we have the part with the trills, and I know, at least for me, trills with third and fourth finger are a little harder than with other fingers, but since that's the position we're playing in, you'll want to practice those a little bit. But don't worry, one turn in your trill is probably enough, so you don't really have to do more than that for the trill. So it'll sound something like this. And then the ending of that phrase, we have an A sharp, so that's going to be a high first finger. Sorry, I accidentally called that a high first finger. What I really meant to say is low first finger. And the way I've fingered it is you will be shifting down to half position. So if you have a third finger D on the A string, then you'll shift, if you can see my hand, you'll shift down a little bit. So your third finger is on the C sharp next to the D. And if you have trouble finding this, you can tune it with the E string. And make sure it sounds like a nice minor third. And it's easiest if you shift your whole hand down, so you have a whole step between the C sharp and the B, and then a half step between the B and the A sharp. So to practice this intonation, you'll probably want to do this shift a few times from the D to the C sharp. And then once that's comfortable, you can add the other 3 notes. So, and then practice that a few times. So next we have the tutti that starts in the pickup to measure 13, and that that sounds like this. So this starts with a B and an F sharp, which are both played by the first finger on the A and E strings. So since this is a perfect fifth, it's probably easiest if you put your finger on both strings at the same time. This will make you not need to move your finger really fast between strings. Then we have another half position starting on an A sharp, and you can just stay in this half position for all three of those. This will make it easier than having to shift up and down every time. And then after those, you can shift back up to a normal high first finger on the F sharp. For the bowing and phrasing for this, I'm trying to accent the F sharps, so, and kind of doing a little mini crescendo into them. This will, again, this is kind of like the opening. This will make it more interesting than if you just played the whole thing the same, which would sound like this. If you add a little mini crescendo towards the F sharp, then it'll sound more musical. And then we go back up to the F sharp and the B. And then the ending of that phrase is, and for this one we have another low first finger. We have a lot of low first fingers in this movement, so if you want to practice that by just playing these three notes, the B, C sharp, D, and then reaching your first finger down to the A sharp. So the next tutti we have starts in the pickup to measure 21, and it starts with a quarter note pickup to a whole note. So for this, you'll probably want to start about in the middle of the bow to give yourself time to get to the tip for the next whole note to be a nice full bow. So it sounds like this. And then for these 16th notes here, you'll want to do a similar stroke to the ones before, pretty connected. Just kind of in the middle of the bow, wherever it's comfortable. And you'll also want to try to accent the big beats a little bit so they don't all sound the same, and so you don't lose your place in the measure. So you can practice this by counting in your head, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then keeping this beat going while you practice the 16th notes. So. And just give each one a little bit of an accent, a little tiny bit of pressure with your pointer finger of your bow. And then in measure 27, we have the up-up pattern, but instead of a down bow after, we have a sneaky up bow. So you have to make sure that you don't miss that sneaky up bow. So instead of just 2, there's 3 up bows in a row so that you can go down, up, down. And then at the end of this phrase, we have another one of those low first fingers. So you can do the same thing that you did earlier by practicing sliding your first finger from first position to the low first finger. And then for the last note, you can just stay in half position and play the B with a second finger. Measure 27 is going to sound like this. The next next tutti we have is in measure 37, and this one is going to start on an A on a first finger in third position. So if you can find your A with your third finger in first position, and then tune it with the A string, and then shift your whole hand up to third position so your first finger is on the same A. And then you can tune it again and make sure it sounds good with the A string. So 37 sounds like this. And as you can see, I'm using the same bow stroke as we did with the eighth notes in the beginning of this movement. And then in measure 39, we shift back down to first position. So you can practice this shift by starting on the first finger A in third position, and then shifting your whole hand down to first position, and then finding the same A with a third finger. And you can just go back and forth a few times, making sure to move your whole hand and make sure this is comfortable for you. So in measure 39, we have another one of those trill passages with the third and fourth finger. And once again, you can just do one trill on each one. That'll be enough. That'll sound good. And then we have, again, that up-up pattern, so make sure to pay attention to those up-ups after the trills. The next tutti we have starts in measure 53, and I'll just play that section through for you so you know what it's supposed to sound like. So in this section, as you can hear, it's a bunch of the same pattern repeated over and over again. And to make it more interesting, we can work on doing what we did earlier in this movement and make little mini crescendos into the big beats. So the first three notes will be growing into the fourth note. And you can just practice this a bunch of times on the very first pattern in measure 53 to help your bow get used to it. You can also slow it down a little bit to really exaggerate that little crescendo. And then after this, we have the same pattern repeated on different notes. And there's a lot of low first fingers and high third fingers. So I suggest going slowly and carefully through each of these different patterns and just blocking out your fingers to make sure they get used to it. And if you're having trouble figuring out the intonation of all of these, you can just go through all of them really slowly and practice each note with a tuner, and keep your fingers in their positions to make sure your hand gets used to playing in that position. I'll play it through one more time a little bit more slowly. Practice strategy for this might be playing along to a recording, and if you want to play along to a slower one, you can feel free to play along to the part I just played. Our next tutti starts in measure 68, and it's just some long whole notes and half notes until the next solo. And then you want to make sure you stop stop right before the solo at measure 72 because the solo plays that B by themselves. And then the next one we have is the last tutti of the movement, and that starts in measure 97. So the soloist has the first note of that measure, and then everyone else comes in with them on the up bow F sharp. So. And then if you remember what we talked about at the beginning, you can try to accent or do a little mini accent on the big beats. So that's the D's in this case. And then the next measure with 16th notes sounds like this. Okay, so in measure 100 and measure 102, we have the up-up pattern again, but this time there's only 2 up-ups, so no sneaky third up bow. So you don't have to worry about that this time. And then the very last note of the movement is like a grand finale, so really make sure to use the whole bow and hold it all the way through the measure, and it also has a fermata on it. So once we're in orchestra, the conductor will tell you when to stop playing. So really hold that note to its full potential. Okay, I hope this video has been helpful for you guys. Let me know if you have any questions. You can feel free to email or text me, and I am excited to work with you on this.